Hello, baby. It's Thursday, August 15th, and Chapo's coming at you. Me and Felix are joined today by the multi-talented old friend of the show, Dan Boeckner, who's back to talk about some of the personalities and quirks of his home country of Canada. But he will be doing it for the first time as officially an expat Canadian in the off-world colonies of the state of Ohio. Dan, welcome to America. Welcome to the land of the free. Welcome back to Chapo.
Thanks for having me, guys. Truly a new life awaited me that I did not know about. And now I'm comfortably in its bosom. And I got to say, it's pretty fucking great here. The rumors are true. Ohio, greatest state in the union.
Really, I've heard rumors. I've heard rumors about Ohio, but it's not that it's the greatest state in the union. I have heard things. Let me just say, Dan. Obviously, we'd like to talk about some of the weirdos in the Canadian media ecosystem, and why Canada keeps building monuments to Nazis. But before we get into that, I'd like to talk about your adopted home country here for a second. Just discuss a little bit some of the events of the presidential election over the last week or so. The crown jewel of which was the much touted Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Twitter/X space. It was touted as not an interview, but a conversation between the two most important men in the world.
Oh my God.
As of this recording, has been viewed approximately 10 billion times.
10 or 20 billion, I've heard.
And those numbers are legit. It has over 40 billion impressions. And in fact, X's analytics shows that there are thousands of generations yet to be born that have also experienced this and formed an opinion of it in some sort of fourth dimension of space. But Dan, you listened in on the Trump-Musk space.
I did.
And wow, what can you report to us from this? Because all I heard from it was that it didn't work.
It didn't work for like the first half hour. I think I mean, I'm not sure if it was exactly 30 minutes that went by before anything was, because you would go to the space and you would just see the avatar of Trump and the avatar of Elon, and it would be like 0 people in attendance. and then just like something went wrong. And then so Elon immediately claimed that there was a massive denial of service attack on the space.
Yeah. Some guy replied and was like, Democrats are trying to shut this down. And Elon went, yep. It's my favorite thing he does when someone says something like insane, where the implications of it would be like monumental, like people would go to prison. People will say things to him where they're like, I heard that Democrats are finding murderers at the border and they're letting them loose to go kill your family, Elon. And Elon's like, yeah, I'm hearing about that.
Yeah.
I'm
looking into it.
Yeah.
Seems correct.
I'm thinking about like looking into that. Yeah. Just like these insane that like there's a Democratic hacker botnet and they're like, the last that we will lose this election if a 78-year-old man talks about, his favorite off-Broadway productions with the least charismatic man in the world. We have to DDoS this.
But not only that, like not only did he just like tweet out, "Yep, seems like it," or "Yep." When the space started working, the first thing he said was, "There appears to be a giant denial of service attack on us because what President Trump has to say is dangerous." You know. Like that that was the gist of it. And then what President Trump had to say was like a fucking, at least for the first 15 or 20 minutes, it seemed like an eternity, just a mournful recollection of the time he almost got killed.
It was like him talking about that, and like Elon is so fucking inept, he doesn't realize like how much that scared Trump.
Yes.
So there was kind of a sense of like, Trump is horrified of his own mortality. This probably like changed how he sees himself, how he sees the world forever. He legitimately, probably has PTSD from it. And Elon's like, yeah, and you were actually like Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
You did that.
And
You were like my favorite meme, brave platypus. The platypus is brave.
Now, did Elon try to did Elon make any note or mention of the second shooter theory that I've been seeing sort of crop up in various places?
No,
Because
not that I heard. I mean, the thing he did try and do was sort of insinuate the Trump Secret Service that there was some kind of failure, like security failure, and Trump immediately kind of rebuked that. And there was a nice moment where Trump was recollecting like the security guards leaping on him and covering him.
Yeah. That's the only part of it that he likes. He likes talking about like how big and strong they were.
Yeah, and how they covered him completely.
Yeah.
Covered his scared little body.
That almost seems like if he was born later, he would have been one of those PVC inflation guys. Totally. He seems to really like that feeling of like just being encapsulated.
The security of just like beef around you, you know.
my meat shield held. Then there was I like the idea that Trump rebuffed the idea that there was a major lapse in security, because I mean he did get shot. I mean, I would think that on its face is a fairly damning indictment of the Secret Service. And by the way, I think it was like ABC. No, it was like ABC or NBC News had footage from the Pennsylvania State Police from when the shooting happened, and it was the most Super Troopers thing I've ever seen outside of that movie.
Yeah,
these guys are running around going, "Bro, I told them, bro, give me a lift," and this guy literally like uses this guy's hands as like a step to look up the ledge. He's like, "Yeah, he's there, man, he's there, bro," and then they get back on the roof, and the guy's already dead, and they're like, "I fucking told them about this shit, bro.
I told them they need to post the guys over here. I told them that the Secret Service. I told them that Tuesday."
So I would say,
Will, do you know that like one cop, like they saw the guy with the gun, the ugly guy, and they saw that he was armed. They saw he was on a rooftop, and they sent like an officer up there. And Crooks like had his gun pointed at him, and the cop just climbed down the ladder. He was like, "Okay, not my business." He like did the Uvalde thing.
Well, Trump addressed that in the Twitter space where I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was basically like, the guy went up the ladder and he couldn't get the shot, and he went back down.
Yeah, he went up the ladder and couldn't get the shot. That's a very generous appraisal of it. I mean, I guess like he likes anyone who's like a big, strong guy, and he doesn't want to like impugn any handsome, any of our handsome first responders, be they troops or cops or whatever,
firemen, delivery man.
Let's not forget EMS. Let's not forget EMS.
Pizza delivery guy.
Yeah,
but well, first of all, the clips I heard of it made it sound like Trump had some sort of like extreme lisp.
Today, they're using all their money and borrowing money just to live. It's a horrible thing that's happening.
I'd never heard him sound like that. I don't know if this was just an audio issue or his dentures were falling out, but like
they claim it's an audio issue.
Yeah, the Trump campaign then released like a cleaned up audio where he wasn't sounding like Sylvester the cat anymore. But like more than anything, I was struck by like, one, how absolutely desperate Elon Musk is to get like some juice back from Trump on his X, the Everything app.
Yeah.
Because, and also just how low energy Trump was. And like, maybe it's just, he doesn't want to be interviewed about his near death experience or have it be implied that his own Secret Service is trying to kill him. But Musk's cringing, desperate grasping of like, he wants the profile because, look, many people have pointed this out. Trump is probably the greatest poster in the history of Twitter. Mm-hmm. And then nothing could be more indicative of where this campaign is going, that he returns to Twitter to promote this stupid space that like it took a half an hour to get started. And this is, by the way, an audio only stream on the website run by the richest man in the world, who constantly intones about how he set up X to like support freedom of speech against attacks by the government. He had how long to prepare for this shit? I mean, like, even if you believe it was a DDoS attack that caused it to crash, like, why? Weren't you anticipating this? Can't you get your audio only streamed for your interview with the most important man in the world to work properly?
No, he cannot. I mean, Twitter is juiceless. Like, Trump was super low energy. The drill account has been sold off to, like, it's over.
But no, the thing that is really like a stand-in for where I think Trump's campaign is right now is that the other, he posted on Twitter to promote this Fugazi interview with Elon Musk, and then the other thing that the Donald Trump account posted was this unbearable AI video of him and Elon dancing like schmucks.
Yeah,
it was just this terrible AI generated video, and it was just like, people have been pointing it out. It's gotten so bad that Trump is posting cringe, something he's never done before. He is posting
he's
cringe.
Striking out. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Somebody had a perfect assessment of that video, which was that it's going to be inflicted on nephews by uncles. At family gatherings, it's just gonna be like, hey, like, watch this. But my
sub jib jab style internet videos.
Totally. My big takeaway from listening to that, I mean, it was like the one thing that it shouldn't have been, which is it was fucking boring. Like, it was super boring to sit through. Trump's initial, like, recounting of his attempted assassination, his near-death experience was grim and sad to listen to. It was like depressed Grandpa Simpson. And then, he kind of got some juice back when he started talking about immigration with Elon, where he claimed that not only are murderers and rapists being sent to America, but also non-productive members of society.
Yeah, there were some funny gaffes. So, like, for how his voice sounded, I think, like, it's one of two things: his dentures weren't in, or it's just like there was so much, like, packet loss and shit that, like, no one could sound good. Who knows? I could see Trump having a weirdly antiquated internet connection, but, like, as the immigration stuff is when he really got rolling.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, we've talked a lot about how there are these parallels between Trump 2024 and Hillary 2016. The interesting thing with this call is it reminded me a lot of the, like, activist calls that Hillary would do in 2016.
That's a huge call.
Yeah, because it was like absolutely nothing in there that attracts independence. Like, no independent hears that and is like, oh, this guy isn't, like, weird and scary to me.
Yeah.
But for, like, the base, there's all the, like, just incoherent, baffling, and, like, just insane, like, immigrant stuff that, in 2016, he would leave a lot of that stuff to surrogates. Like, it was still, like, a very anti-immigrant campaign, but the really, like, insane European style, like, right-wing immigration demagogue stuff, he sort of would try to tone that down, at least coming from him directly during the general election. But, in a mirror to Hillary's activist calls, like, the response to this, the only positive response has been to, like, people who were always going to vote for him, no matter what, going, oh, this really cheered me up. He really gets it. He really knows about, like, mestizo skeletons and how they're smaller than Germanic ones.
Yeah, I mean, my two big takeaways from that whole thing, besides how depressed he seemed at the beginning and the lisp, there was a very small moment where you could tell Trump was, like, getting bored and annoyed with. I don't think he likes Elon Musk.
No,
he hates him.
I think he despises him. And there was a great moment after they were talking about, like, nuclear power and how Nagasaki is okay now. So people shouldn't be afraid of nuclear power because it's a functional city. But then there was this little aside where Trump was like, well, Elon, I know if you want to do the AI, and we have to do the AI because everyone's competing on the AI. And I know you and your people are a big fan of the AI. If we have to do the AI, we have to double the power output of the United States. And Elon just completely glossed it over. And was just like, oh, yeah, sure. And then I was at the same time, I was kind of looking through, like, you can see who's listening. There was like 200,000 people. But for the first time in like 6 months, I was like, oh my God, Bored Apes. There's so many fucking Bored Ape avatars.
Yeah, those are the Bored Apes have replaced the forgotten men and women of the 2016 campaign. Those are the new forgotten men and women of America. No more people who got screwed by NAFTA. It's people who like are holding on to their Bored Ape, hoping that the Seth Green TV show happens.
That's right. That's right. Hoping that those charges against BitClout don't stick.
Yeah.
The whole thing seemed very desperate, more on Musk's part than Trump. I just think Trump was like low energy because he was just probably crabby and just didn't want to be there. I mean, that photo of him just like looking sullenly at a phone, just like at a desk at his big like conference room in Mar-a-Lago or wherever he was broadcasting from. He just looked sullen and unhappy to be there. But like, as would any normal human being having to spend 2 hours with Elon Musk.
Yeah, it's the most I've ever related to Trump because it's the exact feeling I get when like I agree to do someone's podcast like 2 months in advance. And then like it's the day of, and I'm like, oh fuck! Like what can I lie about or what? No, that would be bad. I should do this. It's the exact same feeling.
To move on from Trump, you said like he got a little juice going when he wants to talk about his favorite topic, which is immigration. But I just want to highlight a couple things from his vice presidential nominee, and basically from like 2019 until the present day, JD Vance has been on like the podcast circuit. Which, I mean, if he ever had ambitions to be anyone's vice president or president of the United States, he probably shouldn't have done that. Because, I mean, like the audio clips just keep coming. And the first one I want to talk about is that this was on a podcast with, how should I describe it? A guy with one of the most ridiculous, like sort of boutique beards I've ever seen in my life. Cool. One of the largest, squarest. It's like if the guys from ZZ Top had like hard 90-degree angles on their beard.
Yeah,
that's what this guy would look like.
What do you mean? Like 90 degrees, like forward,
like rectangle. Like instead of a natural like Rip Van Winkle style beard, they had it like went to like white guys who go to the Dominican barber shop to get like right angles put on their like hanging facial hair. Not like a line, not like an edge. Get an edge done on your Rip Van Winkle style old man beard.
Very cool.
Or like your Santa Claus beard, but like squared off with a protractor.
It was the like white version of Joe Budden's digital beard. Maddeningly straight. I didn't know hair could do that.
So yeah, I don't know who this guy is or what his podcast is, and I don't really, and I don't even know the context of what he said this, but he was explaining a little bit about the history of like the history of immigration in America, and he said, "quote."
So obviously you had this massive wave of Italian and primarily Italian, Irish, and German immigration, right? And that had its problems, right? It had its consequences. You had higher crime rates. You had these sort of ethnic enclaves developing. You had inter-ethnic conflict in the country
where you really hadn't had that before.
Wait, I'm sorry, we're Germans banding together and doing a bunch of crimes? Is that?
Well, I thought Germans are like an earlier immigrant group than the Irish and the Italians. But like, let's take what he says at face value. And I think the thing that I found interesting about this, and like again, I don't know the context or what he went on further to say, is that essentially what he's saying here is correct. Like, Irish and Italian immigrants were not wholly embraced by the American native population and did have sort of ethnic enclaves and inter-ethnic hatred and tension in American history. But like, these 150 years later, like they are just every white person in America. So like this would be an argument for immigration, like not against it.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually we're going to melt you down until you're a fat Midwestern cop who's just like tasering people for no reason because he feels afraid.
I mean, waves of immigration will always produce like certain tensions between native populations and recent arrivals. But like if we're going to use the Germans, Irish, and Italians as an example, it seems like that's pretty much worked itself out by now to the benefit of America's law enforcement communities.
And it seems like somebody's pretty ungrateful to the German community for providing Budweiser, you know.
And also, and this is where like he's talking like Bill the Butcher here.
I don't see no Americans. I see trespassers, Irish hops.
Like, didn't he just convert to Roman Catholicism? Doesn't he understand that he is the invader and his Roman popery?
Well, he's more like a double agent, you know. Bill the Butcher would see him as like a Tokyo Rose type, or the Vatican.
Like on its own, outside of context, I think like basically he was just stating a bit of historical fact. However, on another podcast, he said raising grandchildren is the whole purpose of the postmenopausal female.
But it makes him a much better human being to have exposure to his grandparents.
Well, I don't know.
And the evidence on this, by the way, is like super clear.
That's the whole purpose of the postmenopausal female in theory.
And to that, I would just say, look, if you find yourself referring to women as females and you're not a Ferengi, like this is what people mean when they call him weird. Like, it's the entire purpose of postmenopausal females is raising grandchildren. And like as far as political rhetoric goes, like the easiest layup is to be like, we love and support all grandmothers. But he had to say postmenopausal female.
Yeah, Will, me and Hassan watched the podcast he was on, and I think it was either the Digital Beard guy or some other like a guy who's friends with Ivan Throne. These were the types of podcasts he was doing. But he said, while talking about how once a woman's menopausal, don't just throw her out like we all want to. You can turn her into a grandma.
Yeah, you can turn her into a babysitter.
He also said that, that's like one of the hidden advantages of marrying an Indian woman is that their moms have like a racial buff for being grandmas. And it is exactly what you said. Like he was talking about how like multi-generational living and all this shit is good. And it's, again, that is such an uncontroversial statement. It is the type of thing that you say to a hated aunt at Thanksgiving when you cannot, you can't think of anything that isn't that. You have to think of the least objectionable thing. You just have to fill the fucking air with something. It is that type of statement that it's really good for kids for their grandparents to be around. It's fun for both of them. But he does it in such an off-putting and fucking stupid way that I almost don't agree with that sentiment. It almost makes me go actually, grandparents are fucking stupid. Kids hate their grandmas.
They should be legally prohibited from being involved in the lives of their grandchildren.
That's right. They're crazy. They're old. They have bad ideas. They're usually racist.
They're pushing Diet Mountain Dew on our children.
I don't know. The Vance thing, being in Ohio now, has given me another layer of perspective on it. And the town that he grew up in is not that far from Cincinnati. It's not the holler,
No.
But I've just been thinking about in the 1890s, it was very easy to just breeze into a town and be like, I'm an explorer. I've traveled Africa, Antarctica, and this guy, in 2024, the culture is kind of encouraging you to reinvent yourself and create a persona for yourself, but everything is just fucking fact checkable. So
you
just can't. I mean, it is the return of the age of the grift, but you have to do it differently. You can't just claim something, And I think people see through that and find him just completely repellent.
Yeah, what he's trying, it is the same version of a guy who killed somebody over a wagon in 1830 who goes to another town and is like, I'm a physician.
Yes.
You could do that back then. You can't do that now.
You cannot do it now.
It is unbearably hard to have a secret family in 21st century America. But those previous waves of immigrants, they entered a country in which, if you just cross the county line, you could just have a whole other family. No one would everyone would ever know about it.
Exactly.
Unless the two of them ran into each other at the sorghum market or whatever people were doing back then.
Yeah, you could be the worst guy in town. You could be someone. You could be like a notorious horse thief. You could
A footpad.
A footpad.
A brigand.
A brigand. Yeah. A knave.
Yeah. Yeah, you could. Yeah, I don't know what the crimes back then were. It was like horse theft.
Horse theft was the only crime. That was the only crime in America.
Yeah,
chicken wrestling. I think
Yeah, like revealing a woman's ankles in public. That was like a big one. That type of crime. But if you committed that, you were like Richard McNair. They would put you in the highest security well. They would throw you down a well unless you walked like 3 miles and then you were like, hey, I'm a new guy. They're like, okay,
this guy seems cool.
Yeah,
not like that chicken wrestler we heard about in the next town over. Gonna get that guy, put him in a well.
That's the problem. Is like JD is trying to occupy the archetypes of previous generations and centuries, but just he's a man at a time.
Yeah, sometimes returning to tradition is like not good for your political career.
Yeah, and I guess from the Democratic side of this campaign, I guess like the marquee thing that I've noticed this week, as the war on Gaza just becomes like even more of a barbarous slaughterhouse every passing day. This thing now where like Kamala supporters or like politically active online Democrats who may or may not be FBI agents have sort of given up the ghost on defending Zionism or the state of Israel, but are replacing that with pitting Palestinians and Arab Americans against black people.
Yeah,
and it's this weird thing going on right now where they're just like, like white people who are like, we warned y'all about the watermelon community. Like,
it's a lot of white people sounding like Josh Shapiro in the past few days.
Yeah.
I have seen so many people, so many white people who are like, y'all, I've been fitting on TikTok, and they're fucking standing with business and spinning the block on these watermelon people.
And I feel like I literally did see one person say, like, this is too good. I've spent the last several hours watching black creators on TikTok dog walk these folks, and I can't get enough of it. But like,
you only have one life. You really only have one life, and you just got to use it for the best things that you can think of.
But I mean, I as I said, like, I think the interesting tell here is that, like, in no way, shape, or form are these like highly active, engaged, sort of like Democratic partisans on social media. They've given up trying to defend Israel, even in the slightest. But now they're just going back to reverting to mean, which is just like, okay, well, we can't do that anymore. Let's just attack Arab people and use black people as our cudgel to do that. And like setting up this idea that like Palestinians, like they want our solidarity now, but like your ancestors sold ours as slaves or something like that. Just zero IQ propaganda, just like the most just racist, low effort dog shit imaginable. And I mean, like, whether it has any effect or not, but I have seen like an increased intensity of it this week.
Yeah, we have seen this playbook before. I remember seeing it in 2014. Every time, like during like BDS's ascendancy, this would get brought out a lot. And the idea of like, there's racism in every culture, but the idea that like the average person in Gaza is like absurdly racist, specifically towards American black people.
Yeah, it's like, American black people. Yeah,
it's like people get away with just saying like, oh, there's like anti-blackness in Gaza. It's just like anti-Semitism on the left. You never have to like bring up an example of what that means.
No,
it's just this ambient thing that you are supposed to accept, like prima facie, and there's no like proof or evidence or anything. You are just supposed to accept it. I mean, I think fortunately that this is just, very cynical people acting repulsively. I don't think that it's like widespread enough to like actually affect, like, the actual movement. And I think people are smart enough to realize that they're being pitted against each other, but it is, people just acting disgustingly.
It's annoying and depressing to look at, even if it doesn't move the needle. It's just another brick in the misery wall of 2024,
Well, I mean, you could look at the silver lining being like even the most committed, networks of bots I'm sure they're all bots. No, but I mean, I think you could look at the silver lining of just being like, they're not trying to defend Israel anymore. They cannot possibly defend this massacre. So they're just saying like, we warned y'all about Palestinians and how devious they are.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I've got a good bot, analogous bot story out of Canada.
Let's turn our gaze in the northern direction to our neighbors from the north, which is I check in on some of the quirky personalities and events that have been taking place in Canada. But Dan, why don't you lead us off with a bot story from Canada?
Okay, so there have been sustained protests at a lot of Canadian universities, obviously pro-Palestinian solidarity encampments, which have been dogpiled by our craven media. And a lot of these protests have, voluntarily disbanded or gone into talks with university staff about, divesting from their various financial interests that benefit Israel directly. But I guess it was last week, a story came out in the National Post, this completely credulous story, just goggle-eyed story about how they had solved it. Like they had solved the issue of how Canada's most prestigious university, McGill, could have been taken over by this awful ideology of anti-Semitism in an encampment that was protesting the genocide of entire people. And the way that they figured it happened was an Iranian botnet.
Of course. Of course.
But the funniest thing is, so the source for the story is a Saudi-backed media company based in London called Real Iran News.
Yeah, it's this is a subsidiary of Turkey Alpha Sol's media and research group.
Yes.
Which it owns a bunch of publications like this Real Iran News. And you read the articles in them and they're like, did you know that Shias descended from snakes?
Yeah, exactly. and the primary journalist on this is an Iranian Canadian woman who occasionally files for the CBC. The main source on this story about Iranian botnets hypnotizing McGill students into becoming anti-Semites is a company called Expose, which is spelled XPOZ. Expose. And would you believe that Expose, the only source on this story, is a cybersecurity firm?
Well, hey, look, if you don't want those Iranian botnets, you gotta call Expose. Better call Expose.
So
clean out those bots.
So the National Post is reporting this, just oh my God, can you believe it? It's proof in the pudding. And they, I was just okay, what is Expose? And it took me about 3 seconds to look up this company. I'm just going to read you guys the names of the people who run this company. We've got Ron Farhi, Ido Avnir, Modi Alakayam, and a woman named Danielle Israel.
Kind of on the nose, don't you think?
Even more on the nose is the fact that the CEO and co-founder, his bio on their website is I have a background in cyber defense and operations with the Israeli Air Force. Every one of these people lives in Tel Aviv.
I didn't want to call it out of hand, but when you said it was a cybersecurity firm called Expose, spelled with an X, it is they only have one naming. They only have one naming convention. everything.
Startup Nation.
Yeah, they name everything the same. The only area of creativity they have is, of course, restaurants. But any real Israeli company is called Dynamex.
Dan, I remember back when the McGill Palestinian solidarity encampment was more in full swing. Per our what we were just talking about, I remember seeing this it was a post from a McGill or professor or some Canadian academic, white lady, to be clear, who's a professor of decolonial studies or some shit like that.
Yeah,
and she was slamming the encampment for being occupying, quote unquote, First Nations land that was unceded First Nations land. And then, like, in the same Facebook thread, the official spokesperson of the Quebec, indigenous tribe or First Nation that it is the supposedly like the landholders of that unceded Canadian land,
Yes.
was just like, yeah, we gave them permission to be here. This is fine with us.
Yeah, it's an anti-colonial struggle, dumbass. I mean, so that is one contour of Canada. I mean, I've talked about it a lot on my old podcast, but that type of chastising, just trying to shut down like a real, true anti-colonial struggle that is trying to stop, like active, ongoing, current violence by using the same language, by using the language of decolonization. And I think it's nowhere, better exemplified than our foreign affairs department, which is headed by this woman, Melanie Jolie, who's kind of a protege of Chrystia Freeland, who I've talked about on this show before. Mm-hmm. So Freeland's been around long enough that she's kind of spawned these sort of lesser Tracy flicks,
Yeah, they've sort of budded off of her. They've been sort of cloned.
Yes, and now they're
cloned,
and now they're like running foreign policy. And just as an example, a couple of weeks ago, it came out that one of the programs in the new budget for the Foreign Affairs Department is something called gender inclusive demining. That is that is going to take place. It's going to be implemented in Ukraine.
Oh, no one could use it more than them.
Yeah, exactly.
This is from the National Post here. It says, I'm quoting from the article. It says here, a relatively minor item in an announcement from the Prime Minister's office regarding funding for gender transformative mine action in the war in Ukraine has raised eyebrows on social media. The press release that went out on Saturday makes mention of $3.2 billion in financial and military support to Ukraine in 2024, but outlines a number of smaller targeted initiatives. One of these, listed as gender including demining for sustainable futures in Ukraine, has a funding budget of $4 million. This project from the Halo Trust aims to safeguard the lives and livelihoods of Ukrainians, including women and internally displaced persons, by addressing the threat of explosive ordnance present across vast areas of the country. Project activities include conducting non-technical surveys and subsequent manual clearance in targeted communities, providing capacity, building key national stakeholders, and establishing a gender and diversity working group to promote gender transformative mine action. Dan, I read this whole fucking article and I still don't understand what gender transformative mine clearing is.
They're going to hire women, Will.
Okay.
They're the ladies to the front. And by the front, I mean the literal front.
Yeah, it's just like how they've defeated ageism by making the average age of a soldier like 48.
Yeah, that's like the young sort of median. I mean, this package that they have for Ukraine and the broader General Affairs Canada package is just like, they don't heavily publicize it. They usually wait until somebody digs it up and they have to respond to it. But it's just so depressing. Like, there's the gender inclusive demining program. There's also, I don't know if you guys remember me talking about a museum to anti-communism, the Victims of Communism Museum. So that project is finally sort of squashed domestically, in no small part because the Ukrainian Canadian Congress had an SS veteran stand in front of Parliament and get introduced as a man who had fought the Soviets, or fought the Russians rather, not during World War II, and then got a fucking standing ovation. And then it came out that he was not only an SS man, he was a completely unrepentant Nazi who had a blog where he was like, this was the best time of my life when I went to Munich and I trained with my friends.
He had a blog? Wasn't he like 107?
He was in his 90s, but yeah, he was posting about how he loved his training in Munich. Ivan Kachanovsky from the University of Ottawa dug that up. He was posting in Ukrainian about how much he loved being in the Wehrmacht,
I mean, well, Dan, like, what has been like the knock-on effect of that standing ovation? Because it was deeply embarrassing, but it doesn't seem like there has been any, this is just a stand-in for so much that's going on in the Anglo sphere. Is that like there are these brutal and unexplainable like breaches in protocol and like our own laws in service of either fighting a war against Russia or fighting a war against Palestine. And it's deeply embarrassing, but there's never any, the media never allows it to gel into a story. Well, and there's never any follow-up, or there's never any like consequences to any of this shit. Because another story I see here from the Ottawa Citizen from this month, monument to Nazi collaborators shows need for more Holocaust education, special envoy says.
Like, how many fucking times do we have to do this? I mean, I have been talking about Nazi monuments in Canada for, I think, over 6 years at this point, and they just keep finding them. This one is in Elora, Ontario, which is a quiet little town outside of Guelph, outside of Toronto. And it's a monument to the Estonian Nazi division, who are basically fighting the Red Army. Their fix for this was to take the names of the Nazis off the monument, but leave the monument up. So, and like, what is happening with this? Like, is it creating any changes? The answer is sort of, because instead of building the anti-communism memorial for the price of $7.5 million in Ottawa, instead, the Canadian government is quietly building an anti-communism museum and Holodomor museum in Ukraine for $15 million of taxpayer money. So,
wow.
So we're just moving the Ukrainians want it. We're moving the anti-communism museum back to the motherland, If you're Canadian and you paid for it, you've got to get a ticket to Kiev to go see this.
That is really annoying. Fuck.
It is really fucking annoying.
So yeah, there's the gender demining, but when we talk about Canada, there's also a number of like you said, these toadies and these lickspittles. Like, what I find fascinating about the Canadian media is just how lower the stakes are as compared to the American media. Like, because the stakes are lowered, like the personalities are even more desperate and stupid. Mm-hmm. And like, it does seem to be like there's this like sort of like just an open casting call for anyone to just sort of come in and just like fill the breach of like opinion needed to, like, whether it's to explain away the Nazi monuments or Canada's ongoing support for Israel. But like it never ends in Canada, and it's just like all these people are they're toiling away anonymously doing this stuff. But it's like I said, because the pressure is so much lower than America. Like, somehow, like, all these people's anxiety and then their desperation is 10 times higher than in America.
No, it's true, and the sort of porous nature of Canadian media. The way to get a job in Canadian media is either to be grandfathered in and come from a media legacy family, or to have zero morals at all. And, publish your columns in the Globe and Mail or the National Post, who will publish anything you want to print, as long as you kind of toe the party line, and then supplement your income with like conservative dark money and have a Substack. But the weird thing about it is that, so you look at these people on their face and like what they publish, and you're like, this is a joke. If you consume international media, it seems laughable because they're, really just like a pack of freakish gremlins.
They're not trying. They're really not trying.
They're not trying. You've got the guy who killed the raccoon and posted about it. You've got the guy who claimed to be an SBU agent accidentally because he needed to big up himself on Twitter. And like, so they'll have their Substacks. But the annoying thing is that the pool is so small in Canada that you have to, if you pay attention to Canadian news, you have to see the raccoon killer, and you have to see this weird, gremlin.
Well, you brought up, there's a couple individual cases I want to talk about, but I want to talk about the saga of Adam Zivo and his elicitation.
Oh my God, dude!
Now I saw this last week, and it was like a warning, and it was like, beware when strangers attempt to boost your ego. You may be in the process of being elicited and suborned into some sort of foreign plan, or you may be getting groomed to be an asset for like China or whatever. So like this Adam Zivo guy like told some story about how he thought he was being elicited, and where did it go from there, Dan? Because like he has this huge like one of these like mega Twitter posts that like no one's gonna read, but the whole story is bizarre.
He's a bizarre guy. He's a paid blue check. He kind of came on Canadian media scene like around the time Russia invaded Ukraine. He went and did some reporting from Ukraine. He also recently went to Israel with a disgraced former Canadian ambassador to Israel, Berkovici, who was dressed down by the Canadian government a couple of years ago for setting up what they describe as a fake Israeli embassy in Tel Aviv. So this guy, as far as I can tell, is kind of like has got theater kid energy and is like used to go to film school and is just like kind of an evil nerd, you know? He was responding to CSIS, which is the Canadian version of the CIA. Our intelligence service has, not unlike the CIA, been trying to rehabilitate their image, right? Like they're like, we're not your grandpa's intelligence agency. We're woke, and we want to engage on social media with our fans, the Canadian public who love us and think we're cool. So they posted this insane thing about what they called elicitation, which is was a thread.
No, it's not someone trying to buy sex from you. It's not someone trying to buy sex from you. It's just someone flattering you into being an unwitting asset for a foreign power.
Yeah. And if you go to their website and follow the link and read their guide to Canadian travelers, you know, like, okay, you might think you're just a guy from Comox, British Columbia. What would a foreign government want from you? But you'd be wrong, according to CSIS.
Is there such a problem with like Canadian adults being groomable that like, you know, this is a problem?
They're like Canadians traveling abroad. If anyone notices you, flatters you, or shows an interest in you, they're grooming you for intelligence work. But like the standard is just being not noticed by anyone, not complimented. This can be so violently upsetting to Canadians that it can put their whole identity into crisis, and they become malleable nodes in foreign influence networks.
Yeah, nodes of entry, so these nefarious foreign governments can melt down our totally functional democracy, where we have like a grocery monopoly and shit. It's awesome. But yeah, so basically the CSIS article goes so far as to recommend like not giving all your information on visa applications. It's insane. It's insane. It's like if you're
illegal?
Basically, yes. Like, be careful what you put on your visa application. So anyway, obviously people are dunking on this tweet because it's insane. And elicitation also sounds like something Ricky from Trailer Park Boys would say. You know? Like, it's just fucking bullshit.
Why don't you start doing your job instead of making false recriminations all the time?
But Adam Givo weighs in. And he originally posted, he's like, funny story, I organized a sting operation with Ukrainian intelligence when a suspicious Chinese man caught my attention. And I immediately seized on it and was like, I quote tweeted it. And I was like, what do you mean by this? I don't believe this. This is bullshit. And then many hours went by and he replied with like a 10-paragraph story about how he met a Chinese man in a mall, got a bad feeling from him, essentially describes him as greasy.
It was very inscrutable. Very inscrutable.
Yeah. Here it is. His vibe was sketchy / greasy.
Oh, okay. No, he meant it in the Trailer Park Boys sense.
Yeah.
Not like he doesn't mean, again, you know, he doesn't mean that he was like literally dripping with Chinese oils and greases, but he was like, yeah, sketchy.
Yeah. He then proceeds to set up a meeting with the guy and then cancel at the last minute because he has a bad feeling about it. And then he claimed, this is all claims. Like, I got to say, Adam Givo, you know, in my opinion, is like 90% of the shit that he reports on, the stuff that he says is bullshit. Like every time he has an article come out in the National Post or the Globe and Mail, there's inevitably 3 or 4 corrections to like central claims, you know? So that's just my opinion. I'm throwing it out there. Seems like a bit of a fabulist, but so he does all this research into this guy and claims that he sees photos of the guy on, you know, his Facebook. The guy had a job at the Shanghai Cooperative Organization that put him in, quote, close proximity to the president of Iran.
Once again.
Yeah, once again. So anyway, he claims that he goes to a military checkpoint in Ukraine, in Odessa, in the middle of a war, as, I might add, a foreign correspondent who is supposed to be like objectively reporting on the war for Canadian media. He's like, actually, I'm going to follow up on this sketchy Chinese guy. Goes to the border or the checkpoint and claims that the checkpoint guy sends him directly to the SBU, who agree to put him as the lead on a sting operation.
And he wears a wire. He wears a wire to meet this guy. I mean, like in this guy's story, he says, yeah, we agreed to do a small sting operation. I wanted to do my part to keep my boyfriend's city, Odessa, safe. Around this time, we were worried about the risks of a potential Russian winter offensive. In February, I met the Chinese man and his wife at a restaurant while wearing a wire. I arrived early and grabbed a table on the ground floor by the window. The SBU officers watched us from a car parked outside, which had tinted windows. And then he goes on to just say, I found his wife suspicious.
I like this is really like, I have tried to, be fair to Ukraine ever since I saw that video of the Azov guys dancing with the Hasids.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was delightful. I thought it showed that they're figuring things out over there. But if the SBU really did like just grab this random idiot from a newspaper and was like, hey, do you want to be a double agent? That really puts you in not a real country territory. I hate to say,
Yeah, like no one looks good in this story, whether it's true or not. No one looks good.
Yeah,
I hope it isn't true. Like that is humiliating for Ukraine.
Either. Yeah, exactly. And the story ends with him getting a plate of mysterious brownies brought to him. So he's at a dinner with the Chinese man and his wife. He says, I moderated my drinking and watched what I ate. Eventually, the Chinese man left and returned with a plate of brownies.
Very suspicious. Suspicious.
Which he said he had gotten from the restaurant for me. But this was odd, as you could just order these brownies from the waiter. So,
yeah. But this is how James Bond spots a double agent.
Yeah, something's amiss. So then he says he placed the brownies in the middle of the table, and then he and his wife insisted at several points throughout the rest of the dinner that I eat them. I declined that I said I was full, and I encouraged them to eat the brownies, but they refused. After some time, the wife took the tiniest crumb from a brownie, ate it, and tried again to get me to eat the rest of the dessert. I declined again.
To be fair, if that happened to me, I would think that this is suspicious.
What is really funny about this, so it ends, and of course, there's nothing conclusive, right? Like the Chinese guy leaves, and apparently, according to Jivo, goes to Dubai, and he meets his intelligence handlers and debriefs them or whatever. What is funny though is the original version of this post he posted at about 1 a.m. after I had kind of started questioning his work with the SBU, and then immediately deleted it. So posted at 1 a.m. and deleted. And when he reposted it in the morning, he left out this amazing coda, which I screenshot, which was he and his boyfriend a week later go out to dinner and he sees another suspicious man at a restaurant and then falls victim to poisoning, which he claims to fix with activated charcoal.
I don't consider myself an expert on poisoning, but I don't think you can cure poisons with stuff that you get at Trader Joe's.
I don't think so.
I just don't think that's true.
And I think that's maybe why he left it out in that was the assembly cut of this story.
But another Canadian media creature that I wanted to pick your brain about is again, these are very boutique figures that nobody in America will know about. When I hear these stories, I'm like, this can't be real. This can't be real. I will say confidently, this wouldn't happen in America. And I'm speaking specifically about this guy named Joe Roberts, who has, how shall I put this, been pretending to be Jewish for much of his professional career.
I love this guy.
And
I love this guy.
He is a real life Walter Sobchak. in that when finally pressed, because like Dan, I believe your friend tracked down this guy's grandparents' graves.
Yes.
And they were buried in a Christian cemetery with crosses on the graves.
So
maybe they got a deal.
It was like, yeah. Well, I mean, like, but when pressed on this, and this is a guy who's been claiming to be Jewish for quite some time, and like
quite some time,
and like defending Israel based on his Jewish identity. And when pressed on it, he said my ex-wife was Jewish.
Yeah, it's basically his, I believe is his stepfather and his ex-wife. So that's the Jewish connection. So he had a story that he liked to tell about.
Is he even circumcised? Is he even circumcised?
Well, I'm going to find out because Joe, the last I heard of Joe before he blocked me for like the third time is that he was going to go to Israel and do the Aliyah, like he was going to go over there. He's done with Canada. He's been living in Canada for years. But my sources tell me that he is in fact moving back to his hometown of Columbus, Ohio, where I currently live. So,
well, you should take him out for a plate of brownies.
I'm sure I'll see him at the farmers market.
but also this guy has like a weird history where he was the founder of the Canadian DSA.
Yeah, he's. So before I knew that Joe was Jewish, he kind of came on my radar because he popped up as the founder of the Democratic Socialists of Canada, which seemed like a pretty sketchy organization. It seemed like
something's not right here. It's
kind of a grin, kind of a front, and at even then, before he started, and he wasn't really claiming Jewish identity then. I looked into him a bit, and when he lived in Ohio, he ran on a Democratic ticket and lost. And his tactic was to accuse his opponent of anti-Semitism, and it did not go over well. So after that, he ended up working for, I forget the name of the organization that, the Al Jazeera documentary, The Lobby.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the American organization that folds after the documentary comes out, he was working for them, so he does that. He moves to Canada. He starts the Democratic Socialists of Canada. And then as soon as Russia invades Ukraine, he pivots to becoming a big NATO guy briefly, like a Halifax Security Forum, like international geopolitic guy, like NATO freak. And then after October 7th, the true final form of Joe Roberts emerged, which is a guy who gets, again, also published in the fucking National Post and the Globe and Mail as an expert on Israel, but is also a guy who's spending his time making AI art of like a Hamas guy slicing through a map of Canada with a knife and saying coming soon, which was then retweeted by Canada Land owner and editor Jesse Brown.
I just got, no one has benefited. Well, I don't know if benefit's the right word, but no one's gotten more out of AI than Zionists. It is like, that is pretty much Israel's renaissance, was the rise of like AI image generators.
Yeah, the rise of why doesn't posts like this get anyone's likes or attention? That's the Israeli, that's the Hasbara apparatus.
Well, they have an endless supply now where they can make their favorite types of images, which is like, it's Santa Claus being forced to swear in a Quran. And it's like, this is going to happen to you.
Or I can't believe this is real.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, I know you saw like the Quebecois mayor who just posted that, and then more AI dog shit. He posted this image of like a bald eagle unfurling its wings with the flags of the United States of America and Israel behind it, and like a volley of missiles.
Yeah,
it was like, we will always defend Canada. What?
That's the triple loyalty trope of being Quebecois, Israeli, and American. His name is Jeremy Levi, and he's the mayor of a small town in Quebec called Hampstead. And he's a conservative, but he's a crazy Zionist. And he's a Zionist to the point where he was honored by the Israeli consul general recently, like a couple of months ago. But his main thing seems to be now posting like Quebec is also lion, sir.
Well, there's one last Canadian media gremlin that I'd be remiss if we didn't mention. The last time we talked about this guy was at our shows in Canada. This is Canadian columnist Tristan Hopper, who you may remember as the guy who wrote an op-ed piece that we read on stage in Montreal and Toronto about kicking a raccoon to death. Well, he's back, folks, and would you believe it? He has continuing gripes with the animal community of North America because someone just called together a bunch of his tweets from just this past week, and he's really going through it.
He's on one. He's completely on one. He's horny posting again. He's talking about doing violence to animals. He's talking about Mrs. Tristan, which every time I see him post that, I feel like he's inching closer to his Joker moment, you know?
Well, I don't even know the context for this, but this is a post. This is a post from Tristan Hopper. He writes, "My mom's first husband was killed in a horrifying industrial accident only a few weeks after their wedding. Our favorite
I had nothing to do with. I was nowhere near.
Our favorite thing to do as children was to have her relive his death. We did it every day." And I assume he's being sarcastic here, but I just would like to know more. The next one, this is two tweets linked together. He writes, "A local cat keeps shitting where my children play. The least insane solution I can think of is to set a live trap, capture the cat, and then return it to the owner saying, 'Oh, sorry, I thought a coyote was constantly shitting where my children play, but I guess it was your cat.' All this time, the kilograms and kilograms of diseased shit I've had to clean up. I thought it was a wild animal, but no, it was your domesticated animal using my property as a toilet. Ha ha." And
it rocks to just be like a syndicated national columnist who just tweets like Rozark, you know? Like,
yeah, but I mean, what I love about this sequence of posts is that he keeps invoking "where my children play." Like, you know, I mean, look, cat shit is not exactly the most pleasant thing to deal with, but he was like, "This cat is where my children play. Where my children play every day, they could be exposed to diseased cat shit."
I think he's kind of giving it away at the end with the kilograms and kilograms of cat shit. I think Hopper maybe has toxoplasmosis.
Yeah.
Like he's just been shoveling this cat shit and his brain is completely cooked. He also had a weird thread about BlackBerry run, which is So he grew up in Victoria, British Columbia, which any Canadian listener will know engenders a certain mindset, a certain vibe, and he grew up in the most Victoria part of Victoria, which is fucking Oak Bay, the rich part. You know, like.
Well, yeah. Here's the BlackBerry War. I mean, again, it's just this cold war between him and his neighbors over their cats and bushes.
This is not an old man, by the way.
Yeah. He's young. And because after endlessly seeing BlackBerry runners popping up in the garden, I vaulted onto my neighbor's property at a discreet time to take out
fact check on vaulted. I would say maybe slithered,
snuck.
Snuck.
Yeah, this is not a vaulting man. This man does not have a kinetic bone in his body.
Yeah, he's got the big vaulting pole. He's about to use it to hop over like a 5-foot chain link fence.
He had the same problem that guy in the Olympics had.
Yeah,
Mrs. Hopper is a very happy lady.
Yeah. It says, "I vaulted onto my neighbor's property at a discreet time to take out like he's fucking SEAL teams.
tactically remove the sticker bush.
The overgrown BlackBerry patch at the source. If the world adopted this policy towards Iran, we would be at peace. Mrs. Tristan disapproved, but was mildly aroused by the insanity."
Fuck off!
I think he's being humble there. It wasn't Mrs. Tristan; it was every woman in Canada.
Yeah.
Let's just say there were flash floods that day.
And then this is the last sequence where he writes here, "It's a common misunderstanding that children have to be taught bigotry. False. Kids are psychotically reactionary, hateful, and xenophobic and have to be taught civilization. My 6-year-old recently noticed her skin was lighter than some of her classmates and immediately asserted that this made her special. She then went on a rant about how men should rightly occupy positions of power but be subservient to their wives. This sounds like something I'm making up. I would tell you if I was.
Well, okay,
Why?
slow down. Yeah, why would you tell? Why would you like tell a story that's fake and then be like, "Oh, by the way, I'm lying"? What would be the function of that? I do like that he has the world's first anti-woke toddler.
Yeah. I guess to wrap things up here, Dan, you know, another thing you've noticed recently was a recent trip abroad by a Canadian foreign minister and a bit of a scolding.
Yeah, so Canada's foreign policy position is essentially like indistinguishable from America. Like, there's a lot of concern and worry in Canada, in the sort of conservative sphere, that our country has been undermined and taken over by China. You know, also in the liberal sphere too. But really, Canada's foreign policy is entirely dictated by America. So, like, in a way, we have been colonized by another nation. It's just not the one they think it is, you know? But basically over the last, like, during the Trudeau administration, Canada-China relationship has hit like an all-time low. They're entirely hostile to the Chinese government. It plays really well at home. But Melanie Joly, like, recently went to China to, in her words, like, we're there to reinforce Canada's commitment to like rules-based international order and democracy. And that's how she kind of framed it when she came back from the trip on her social media. But I found this amazing Chinese report on it, which is just basically like Canadian Foreign Minister Joly visited China for 3 days and left with a reprimand.
She got written up. She got her knuckles wrapped.
The article ends by saying China will not tolerate Canada catering to the West's political correctness on one hand and thereby damaging China-Canadian relations on the other hand. China's diplomatic style is changing and our dog beating sticks are getting upgraded.
What a bit of kismet. I see you're reaching for a dog beating stick of your own right now.
I would never beat this sweet little angel. I would never beat him.
Well, I guess to finish things up here, to return to Tristan Hopper and his jihad against the animal kingdom. He was back. This is just someone surfaced this from April 2019, a Tristan Hopper piece in the National Post. The headline is just all I'm going to read. How to properly slam into wildlife with your car to save your life. And he goes on to talk about how moose kill more people every year in Canada than terrorism does. But it's basically just a how-to guide. Yeah. A how-to guide for how to properly just plow through large animals in the roadways. So it's not to like swerve. See, the crucial thing is don't swerve to avoid them. Once you see them in the headlights, it's too late. You're going straight through.
You got to speed up, knock them out, take them out.
Yeah. Well, that's a bit of good advice whether you're driving in Canada or much of the United States as well. Got to keep your eyes peeled for wildlife. But yeah, don't swerve once you see them. It's already too late. All right. Let's leave it there for today. Dan Boeckner, thank you so much for your time and perspective here on our Canadian neighbors up north. And let me officially welcome you to the warm bosom of Lady Liberty and the free country of the United States of America.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Feels so good. It feels good to get out and breathe the air. Looking forward to running into Joe Roberts and learning about space Zionism 2 or whatever he's working on right now.
The moon.
Free at last.
All right, gang. Until next time, let me just remind you that the Movie Mindset merchandise, quite a smart hat and t-shirt combination through which you can signal your loyalty to watching movies even when you're outside.
I want one of those Golan Globus shirts, man. That's
well, please go to chapotraphouse.store and you will find them available for purchase. All right. Till next time, everybody. Bye-bye. We'll see you in Chicago next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.